And I think he's got such an interesting team to bring into this tournament as well. It's going to give Luca a really hard time, but we are going to take a deeper dive into Luca's team. I know we've talked about a few things so far, but we do have the big hitters. That Choice Specs Miraidon, I think another big player in this match is going to be the Ogerpon. The glue that's going to stick things together as well for Luca is going to be things like that Iron Hands. The security that you've got with that Focus Sash on the Urshifu, it does allow it a little bit more leeway to take an attack, get a big important returning attack off, and hopefully get some return on that. And the other one I would like to mention is that Whimsicott, of course, has got that Encore that could play a pivotal role against something like a Dondozo, especially if it does lock into something like Protect. You can get the Whimsicott in on a key turn. You can really shut that Pokemon down. That's a way that you could, one way at least. I'm sure Luca's got his own game plan to kind of approach this matchup.
Having options into this Dondozo is key, because when you have this leftovers and normally the opportunity to just kind of protect, I'm attack, okay, I'm gonna go back to the protect. This Pokemon can be not really the most fun to get through. I'm eyeing up that move item as choice too, looking at that Earthquake, because offhand, I think the Iron Hands can pair well into this until you see the Earthquake can be dealing a really good amount of damage onto a decent amount of Pokemon onto the field here. Even the Miraidon would not appreciate any of these hits. And being able to then have this Miraidon of your own to be pressuring, again, I'm a little bit worried about the damage output there, but if you can just start chunking things up enough that this Dondozo can then come in to then finish everyone off, well, it's a team effort after all.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really glad you highlighted that. I think the other thing to note as well is if the Dondozo does get taken down, the other thing to consider is you've got to get your moves timed right, because the Tatsugiri has got that Choice Scarf, and it's not one of those Pokemon in an endgame situation where, yes, you remove the Dondozo. We've seen it many times before where players do that, but unfortunately the Tatsugiri comes out because of that Choice Scarf. It's got the jump on everything else on the field, and it's able to kind of clean things up. So it's kind of having that thought in the back of your head, if you are Luca, about how best to deal with that Dondozo Tatsugiri if it is brought to this battle, which you would imagine it probably will be.
All right, Chenyue, again, Miraidon. It's going to be Dondozo. Over on Luca, a little bit, we're going to see the same.
It's interesting as well here. I think one thing to pick up on is Luca's Miraidon, the hit-on engine, activated before the one on Chenyue's side. So does that indicate that Luca has the faster Miraidon? That's something to keep in mind for the rest of this game, I think, as well, because if you do have the faster Miraidon, especially in an endgame situation, it could really help you close out how both players approach this.
All right, well, it's a swap. Miraidon's leaving. Dondozo's best friend is the Tatsugiri, and it will be joining it for start off turn number 1 here, Commander. It's been a bit since we've gotten to see a Dondozo, but Dondozo gobbles up that Tatsugiri, and we're about to get boosts galore. The speed, the attack, the defense, special defense. The Dondozo is looking to go all out offensive, and on the opposing end, you have to watch out. But Terrestrialization is going to be hitting this stage as well. Dondozo, baby.
Yeah, it's going for that grass terrestrialization, get rid of that weakness to the electric threat that's on Luca's side of the field. Really great defensive terrestrialization here, but it is going to be susceptible to this fake out here from the Iron Hands.
The other
it isn't going into the Miraidon though, so it avoids it as we see a Volt Switch come out into that Dondozo, taking that so comfortably.
You can't disrespect the pressure that the Miraidon puts out there, but the swap means nothing happens into that slot. Tatsugiri takes no hit, and Dondozo will be able to act on this turn. It takes a little bit of damage, but Whimsicott hitting the field is going to make sure that you're not taking an Earthquake onto the Miraidon, but Iron Hands, that attack boost is doing a lot to it. You do not appreciate that whatsoever.
You called it, Sierra. You said that Earthquake was going to be a big threat to these electric types on Luca's side of the field, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Chenyue playing an absolute masterstroke in this first turn, getting the Tatsugiri in, going for that Earthquake, the terrestrialization, all in on this first turn, and getting some really good returns here. The Whimsicott obviously in that position where it can take attacks a lot better, but that Iron Hands really threatened, has to get out of there as soon as possible.
We're doing a little bit of a pivoting game for Luca. Ogerpon, Hearth Flame jumps back out onto the field as Encore. If this Dondozo wanted to do anything different, I got bad news from you. I think we're about to see a lot of Earthquakes on our horizon. We got to see how much it did last time onto the Whimsicott, not nearly too much, but Ogerpon, neutral hit will be bringing it down to about half. So sure, maybe you're not changing moves, but kind of working out for you right now.
Yeah, I mean, one hand, it's great. You've got 2 grass types on the field. I mean, you're getting hit neutrally on the Ogerpon because of the part fire typing, but you're not going to be able to take too many of these, right? Encoring the Dondozo into that's great, but how many more Earthquakes are you going to be able to take? See the Ogerpon going down to 6 HP here. The Moonblast coming out from the Whimsicott, doing some decent damage, and an Ivy Cudgel following up. Going to be super effective, but not enough to take down this Dondozo.
I'm just looking at the damage stacking up, and the fact that you are Encore locked does mean that you can't go for Protect. So you can't be spacing out the attacks to slowly get a little bit more back. And I think this is where we're going to really see what Luca's been setting up here. The Whimsicott has locked the Dondozo and set the Tailwind. So sure, there is going to be a double KO on this turn, or at least the one, but this will just get it right here. The critical hit is going to drop the Dondozo.
That is a huge turn here, and Luca fishing for the critical hit. It's got a high chance of landing, and he gets it. Like you were saying, Sierra, setting up this position where the Encore, it is doing a lot with that Earthquake every turn. You don't have too many turns, but I think Luca's plan was, okay, I'm going to get it to the point where it is going to be able to be knocked out by the Miraidon if it does come in. If I lose the Whimsicott, I get my Tailwind up, I'm going to be the fastest thing on the field. I'm going to be able to do some really impactful damage. Now, the Tatsugiri has left that Dondozo, so that will be re-entering the battlefield, of course, and that has got the Choice Scarf. But with that Tailwind in effect, things are looking pretty good for Luca now with that 2x speed boost.
Sometimes the crit lands when the crit lands, and with that increased critical hit chance, playing for that liked it. And even if not, I think the damage that you were even doing with just a regular Ivy Cudgel is still doing a nice amount, that if there was the double KO, the Miraidon can start putting a lot of pressure on. But now we're onto this path of, hey, you've already dealt with this dangerous Dondozo. Now let's see if you can go through the Dragonite. Reminder, this one is choice band locked, so what it locks into right here, right now, is going to be it. And even if it is outsped, since there is no Ferreira, you can go for something like that extreme speed.
No, and that's what we're going to see. The Ogerpon just scout out what this Dragonite's going to decide to do, and it is locking in with that extreme speed now into the Whimsicott, picking up an easy knockout. But the same can be said about the Tatsugiri. Does have that Choice Scarf item. What is it going to lock into? It is going to be that Muddy Water.
Good way to get a little bit of damage here, or at least try to in these upcoming terms, since again, choice locked. That was a choice, and you're locked with it. Miraidon joining the field will be taking hit well. You could also be fishing for those accuracy drops if you get the opportunity to fire off another move. This Miraidon, well, it's got the choice specs itself, and it has the help of the Tailwind. So going on to this turn, I think we'll finally really get to see the power that this Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam can do to the 2 Dragon types across the field.
Yeah, it's going to be a strong attack. You got to realize, though, that the Dragonite does have that multi-scale ability. So as long as its health is at full, it is going to take a little bit less damage from this initial Dazzling Gleam. But will the Tatsugiri be able to take it? Probably not. I think with that Choice Specs item, you know, the Hadron Engine active, you're going to have the Terrestrialization boosting it even further. So Tatsugiri looks like it might be at the end of this game, but the Dragonite still has access to that extreme speed, of course, can get some nice damage onto the field and potentially disrupt things, maybe remove that Ogerpon after it did protect that last turn.
This is where the follow me is going to be coming on in, so sure, you're going to be speedy, but all of your attention is going to be onto that Ogerpon and 6 HP. That is not the damage or the impact that you would want in on this turn. Now we'll get to see that Miraidon freshly Terra Fairy fire off this Dazzling Gleam. The multi-scale for the Dragonite, but the Tatsugiri, without any of that help, is going to be a clean one-hit KO, and the Dragonite took a lot of damage as well.
Yeah, and the nice thing here is now you've got this Iron Hands to bring in if you're Luca. You've got that active fake out. The Dragonite isn't in focus. It doesn't have the resistance to that flinch possibility, so you can stop that extreme speed this next turn, and the Miraidon on Chenyue's side of the field cannot terrestrialize into that fairy type, so it is going to be susceptible to those Dazzling Gleams that Luca has locked into. Looking like it's going to be a bit of an uphill struggle now for Chenyue to get any foothold back into this match. Although you've got to say, the Electro Drift is still there. The Electric Train is still active on the field for Chenyue. So these Electro Drifts are going to be hitting pretty hard into Luca's own Miraidon.
If we get to that point.
We don't.
I think we get to see the writing on the wall, as we are going to be clicking that forfeit button and sending it into a game 2. What a great answer Luca had. I mean, you could look back and say critical hit. Thing is, it's an increased crit chance, and even without that, setting up that Tailwind, that would have been a lot of damage that this Miraidon was still going to be able to do into the Dondozo. You had the choice specs that you could just fire off a Draco Meteor into. You encore lock it, so you could have just been fine. So even though it made it a smidge easier with that critical hit, I think there was still a really, really good way of making sure that you had damaged the Dondozo enough to that point that you could still handle it.
Yeah, I think that's completely the right thing. I think without the critical hit, the Miraidon just comes onto the field, uses Dazzling Gleam the next turn, the Tailwind's still up, and you take it down because it's so close to being knocked out. It's going to be Encore locked. Unless the Encore did end that next turn, of course, and that throws another spanner into the works. But I think that the main thing here is you're using a move that has a high critical hit chance. You're using it enough times, you're going to land it, and fortunately for Luca, got it at the right time.
And even without the critical hit, it, like you said, it dealt a significant amount of damage. So yeah, the Miraidon would able to push on forward. And when we got to this later parts of the game, that Tatsugiri that has that Choice Scarf, since that Tailwind 1 set, this is a Tatsugiri that in other situations could be really quite scary, whether it's going for that speed control or even just these muddy waters. And it never even got this opportunity, that Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam, in off huge. And the Dragonite, even though it took that initial hit because of the multi-scale, well, then where do you go from there when all of a sudden you have an ability that allows you to get faked out and you can't really do too much?
No, and that's the problem. I think both that Assault Vest and the Choice Band on the Dragonite there, I think you kind of both your Pokemon, if you're Chenyue, are kind of setting targets at that point where the Fake Out could go into either and you could disrupt, because the extreme speed from that range probably isn't picking up the Miraidon. It might be enough to get the Iron Hands, but is that really the Pokemon that you want to remove?
I mean, yeah, at that point, if you're not having the Terastallization on it, we missed that opportunity. Couldn't do too much. So heading into now game 2. Have to see where Chenyue wants to be swapping this one up, and it ain't going to be with the lead as Dondozo makes appearance yet again.
Of course, this is where the mind games come in. Both players leading exactly the same. Do we see that Fake Out into the Miraidon slot this time from Luca into Chenyue's Miraidon to prevent that? Or do we see that switch once again from Chenyue to get that Dondozo set up, commit to that Terastallization early on, and then a similar sort of play out from there? Or do we see maybe Chenyue take advantage of the potential threat of the Fake Out and keep the Miraidon on the field?
I mean, we talk about when you're up a game that you could be making these risks, but this is the opportunity while down that you could be making a huge play on this turn. If you think that, hey, my Dondozo got to do a lot of damage last time around, they might not expect that, you could then try and fire off with this Miraidon. Dondozo, that is the protect, and the Iron Hands targeting into it is going to do nothing. Chenyue will have an opportunity to attack with the Miraidon, but maybe not. The Draco Meteor into the slot. No Terastallization means a one-hit KO to be kicking it off.
That is a massive turn here from Luca, and just like you called it, taking the opportunity where that Fake Out was going into the Dondozo here and trying to fish for some utility out of the Miraidon and Chenyue's side of the field, but Luca saying no. We identified earlier in game 1 that Luca's Miraidon outsped, got that Hadron engine active before when it happened this time again. So Luca identifying that, taking full advantage, removing that big threat from the field.
You can see the look on Chenyue's face. Losing your restricted right away is so disastrous, especially too when you do have that Terra Fairy. That is something that could have been clicked to resist. Maybe wanting to save it for the Dondozo, but now you're down a restricted, you're down a Pokemon, and you have a lot of momentum to be making up. Tatsugiri swaps in, Commander, Dondozo gets those boosts yet again, and really has to put them to good use.
Yeah, and you know, if you chose what Luca locked into the Dondozo this turn, ignoring the Dragonite, which did switch out for that Tatsugiri, the Dondozo is going to be a lot more potent now with that boost from the Tatsugiri, but no Terastallization here. The Draco Meteor coming out, doing huge damage once again, boosted by that Choice Specs item.
Wow, it's -2, -4 now, and it did not look like it'll take a lot of damage in return. But that's damage that you will gladly take, because this double-up low kick coming out from the Iron Hands is deleting this big, bad Dondozo. 2 turns into the match. Chenyue down to final 2 Pokemon.
This is absolutely outrageous here from Luca, just not holding any stops back. Really taking full advantage of everything that happened in that game 1, flipping it on its head, reading Chenyue, and really limiting those options now with just the Dragonite and that Tatsugiri. One thing you would say that Chenyue does have at their disposal is the Terastallization that they could still take advantage of, but Luca has the Pokemon advantage. 4 Pokemon to 2. It's going to be a hard uphill struggle.
This has to be the best Terastallization of your life, and not spent in this moment. Extreme speed, the lock-in for the for the Dragonite as Muddy Water is finally going to claim the first KO and get a critical hit onto the Whimsicott, just slowly chipping away. And this is going to be the 2 moves we'll see for the rest of the match. And with the Whimsicott hitting the field, it will be able to set up Tailwind over onto this next turn. So any speed advantage we were looking at with that Tatsugiri is all of a sudden going to be gone.
Yeah, this gets a little bit tricky though, because now if you are Luca, you've got the Tailwind, yeah, but do you have the firepower to take down the Tatsugiri that's now locked into the Muddy Water, and then obviously the Dragonite as well that can kind of ignore the Tailwind advantage here, because you can just pick things off. You can pick the Whimsicott off if you want this turn. You can get around that Moonblast threat. So Chenyue not in the worst spot here, where I think when you look at the options left on Luca's side of the field, I think losing the Miraidon was probably not the thing that he wanted to do, but it was in range of that Dragonite when it's locked into that extreme speed anyway.
It's whether we get to see where this Dragonite targets if you want to try and take down the Whimsicott onto this turn. As Terastallization, Ogerpon looking to output the most damage it can do and bring out that Hearthflame Mask. +1 to the attack we'll see on this turn thanks to that in-body aspect. Of course, it's going to be moving a little bit later on because the extreme speed coming out first is going to make sure the Whimsicott doesn't get the opportunity to speed things up. And we still have to get through a turn of this Muddy Water. It's all about the connects. That's what we're going to be eyeing up, and it will. We drop the grass typing. We're taking a lot of damage, but Woodhammer comes on out.
And it is enough to pick up the Tatsugiri, a one-hit KO, but I think the recoil will probably be enough to take down this Ogerpon. So it is going to be, yes, it looks like that is it. Iron Hands up against this Dragonite from Chenyue's side of the field.
Have we found a window of opportunity after this disastrous first turn to bring this into a Game 3? 1 Pokemon apiece and Iron Hands down to less than half its health. You get the attack raise because of that Quirk Drive, but this Dragonite is at full health. You'll be able to have the fake out to Rick multi-skill, but you're still already taking so much damage, and the choice spent extreme speed. I don't think you can take this down. We might be going to a Game 3.
I think it looks like that's exactly where we are going. The Electric Terrain disappearing, that Quark Drive boost disappearing. The Iron Hands looking not in the best of positions. Has broke that multi-scale, but can it take an extreme speed? It can! Can it knock out with the Wild Charge? It's going to be very close. And Dragonite able to take that pretty comfortably.
The only KO happening on that turn is going to be the Iron Hand taking itself down thanks to that recoil. And we are going to a Game 3. No restricted needed, apparently. Right on. Oh, it left and the rest were able to do it. What a match. It was KO after KO in Luca's favor. That Miraidon gone, Dondozo gone, and still Chenyue finds a window to take it to top 8. I love the World Championships.
This is what it's all about. That was so fast, so furious, and we're going to a Game 3. I mean, like you say, you think it looks so bad for Chenyue, but then you realize, okay, you've got that Dragonite Tatsugiri on the field. You're locked into that extreme speed, and you've got the Scarf there. You can, by getting that initial extreme speed onto the Whimsicott and getting that Muddy Water, put in range for another one, preventing the Tailwind. And then from there, it was just so close, so fine margins for Chenyue to close this one up, especially after Luca had such a great start and really read into what Chenyue was potentially going to do that first turn as well.
This is about to be the nastiest read that you have to be making in the game, the turn 1 of this Game 3, because now you know, for Chenyue, you now know that, hey, this Miraidon's not scared of going for this Draco Meteor. Do I Terastallize? But Luca, you don't want to be then Draco Meteoring into it, so then what do you do instead? Do you fake out and hit to the other slot? Because all of a sudden, you could be on the wrong end of things. This is about to be crazy.
This is going to be one of the best matches so far this weekend, and it all comes down to this Game 3, who will be progressing our first top 4 here at the 2024 World Championships.
Oh, it all comes down to this. 2 very, very worthy trainers. Such an insane set that we've had so far. And hopping into this, I cannot wait to see how this is shaking up. Let's head into this game. We're not going to be wasting any time here. Ooh, we're kicking it with the same leads. We're not switching anywhere.
We are going to see maybe a little bit of an iteration from Luca here coming out, but the Dondozo, there's a threat that we've said it time and time again. Does the Tatsugiri come in? Do you leave your Miraidon out on the field to try and take advantage of the threat of that Tatsugiri, catch Luca off that way, or do you just go down the straightforward route with that fake out?
This might be the call of the weekend. What do these trainers do on the first turn? And terrestrialization from the Iron Hands is going to be the first. Terra Bug. Make sure you're not taking too much damage from that Earthquake, and I think that's a little spoiler of what to come, but you're not taking any damage. Protect yet again. Is the Miraidon from Chenyue going to be on the wrong end of things? The fake out means it's not going to be attacking. Now the Draco Meteor instead target into the Dondozo. Chenyue gets to keep. They're restricted.
That's a really big protect there, because the Dondozo, otherwise, with that Miraidon staying out onto the field, a really nice play to be able to just protect it. And then you've got this nice turn where you know what that Miraidon on Luca's side of the field's locked into, so you can play around it slightly better that way. You know as well that this Iron Hands is now a bug type, so the Earthquake is also not going to be as effective. So do you lock in with something else, or do you forego the Dondozo until later on in this match, maybe bringing in that Dragonite if it is something in the back? There's always a risk, though, that you do that and you fall into that Draco Meteor path, which Luca has already identified as the way that he wants to go with his Miraidon.
That's going to be the issue, but it's going to be a Miraidon that swaps out as the Dondozo most likely wanting to go on to the offensive this turn around. Last time it was at the Protect. This time around, Tatsugiri for yet again that commander. We see the animation 3 times around, and you all should be real familiar. There is some boost galore. Looking to make sure the damage you do on this turn is doing the most. Yes, we did get to see the Terra Bug from the Iron Hands, but you can still pressure a lot of damage into this Miraidon since the terrestrialization has been spent, and you know that it's not going to be a Volt Switch, but that is still so much damage coming on out. It'll be the order up instead with no terrestrialization, the attack boost. It does a lot, but not enough for that KO, and I think the Dondozo is about to go down. Wild Charge, but instead into the other slot.
Oh, he's picked into the wrong slot. The Dondozo gets to have another turn here. The Draco Meteor doing some big damage. I'm surprised that the Miraidon was able to survive that order up super effective into Luca's side of the field. Oh, if the only had went for the Miraidon, but no, really well played from Chenyue, taking advantage and not committing to the terrestrialization either, as we just see a protect from that Dondozo.
With the Protect and the amount of damage coming out from the Draco Meteor, you are -2 despite that choice specs. Wondering if you're trying to get ahead of this Tatsugiri jumping on out and trying to get this damage on in with how it's staggered out. This Wild Charge is going to be the click yet again. We're going to get a little bit of lefties recovery, and that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye out for. We saw how much damage that last Draco Meteor did. I still think it could pick up the KO, but it could be close. And you are also eyeing up that potential of a miss. And see, we're seeing the purposeful target here.
With that unaware ability, though, knowing those drops, that's why the Draco Meteor will continue to do that damage onto the Dondozo. So even though it has taken that -2, not affecting the Dondozo so much, but removing it here allows this Iron Hands now to pick up the big damage onto that Tatsugiri and giving Luca a huge lead in this game 3.
We never wanted the Dondozo to go down a couple turns prior. We wanted to wait for this moment, so the double KO on Luca's end to put him so far ahead in this match. As Chenyue again back against the wall. 2 Pokemon. The Miraidon coming back out. Dragonite going to be joining it. We know that he can make his way back on through this, but Luca's in such a commanding spot.
He is, yeah, but the one thing that you would say is that we saw how well Chenyue came back in that last game with just 2 remaining Pokemon. You've got the Dragonite as well, multi-scale intact, going to be able to take a flurry of attacks, and this is why we're going to see Luca reposition. Does he give up his Miraidon so easily this turn to an extreme speed, or does he try and preserve it for later on in this game?
Oh, looks like it's sticking around at least this first go-around. And terrestrialization for the opposing end of the field. If you are looking at a Draco Meteor going this way, you might as well not bother. It's Terra Fairy. Great defensive type in this situation as the Draco Meteor instead into the Dragonite. Super effective, but thanks to the multi-scale is not going to be the damage to take out the KO. Is now Dazzling Gleam. It's not just a defensive Terra, it's an offensive one. Double damage, Miraidon down.
And it looks like this Dragonite hasn't locked into the extreme speed. It looks like it's going to be locking into something else, and it is that Aerial Ace. Super effective into the Whimsicott, and what you've got to think, Luca has that Bug Terra type Iron Hands in the back. Going to be now weak to that Aerial Ace as well.
looking absolutely massive. We still have 2 Pokemon for Luca, and with that Iron Hands returning, you do have that 1 turn of Fake Out that you can be bringing out. So if you are scared of that aerial ace, you can go ahead and fire off a Fake Out into that slot. But the Dazzling Gleams from this Miraidon, maybe it's not going to be hitting super effective into this, but that is still going to be a lot of damage, even if it's not necessarily the same amount that Luca was able to do, since again, you are the Assault Vest instead. The damage output would be very different.
Yeah, I think the big thing that you called here is how important this Fake Out is in being able to stop this Dragonite moving this first turn. Draco Meteor coming out from the Ogerpon, not Choice Spec. Boosted though, Ogerpon taking that quite comfortably as far as a Draco Meteor and returning with an Ivy Cudgel into that Dragonite, but not enough to pick up the knockout.
That's going to be not nearly enough. No crit, no chance. We get another go around. It is not a priority move from the Dragonite. And Ogerpon tends to be a little bit more on the speedier end, but taking so much, a Dazzling Gleam to surely get off. So Spiky Shield on this turn. It'll be another Draco Meteor targeted into the slot. Not gonna get there. Now we have to see where things will be reacting. Aerial Ace targeted into the Iron Hands instead. 14 HP firing off with the Drain Punch. 2-to-1 advantage now for Luca.
That's a huge survival there. Big damage, but the Iron Hands just clutching out there, returning with a big knockout from that Drain Punch. Now in a position where Luca has 2 Pokemon to the 1, but can the Iron Hands take a Dazzling Gleam? That's the big thing. The Ogerpon definitely can, but what do you lock into? Do you prioritize getting rid of the Ogerpon, locking in with that Draco Meteor, get rid of that, or do you go for the Dazzling Gleam? Here we are.
At -2, you need the most damage coming on out. Both Pokemon are going to be holding on, and now Ivy Cudgel. This is going to be the damage. Gets it down real low. It is going to be follow-up. Drain Punch. We get one more go-around to determine this match.
Now, we've seen the damage from that Dazzling Gleam. It's not going to be enough to pick up either of these targets, and then you lock into the problem of which one do you pick? Do you just go for the follow me with Luca's Ogerpon, give the Iron Hands enough to close this out?
I think we're looking at a critical hit. See if this can be the one that seals the deal, or if Luca has done enough holding on through this match to grab it. We're not even gonna wait for this. That's gonna be the match locked in, and with that, Luca Ceribelli to be moving on to the next stage of competition with a nail-biter of a series.
We talk about top 8 at the World Championships, and the first one we feature here this weekend is an absolute star-studded event. Luca Ceribelli going on to top 4 in brilliant style, and all you've got to say is you've got to congratulate Chenyue on such an incredible performance. When he looked down and out, he was not out, came back fighting and took it right down to the wire. I mean, as close as a match could possibly get.